Today we're going to be talking about all things dragons. Dragons are one of my absolute favorite, maybe however you want to think about them, characters, side characters, animal companions, plot points. I will take anything. I am obsessed and desperate for all things dragons, to be fully honest with you. So today I wanted to go ahead and kick off a reading vlog. However, I realized that there were quite a lot of books to talk about, so I'm going to post this as a separate standalone dragon TBR recommendations, everything that's on my physical TBR, the whole shebang. I don't know where the 4 came from because clearly I only said 3 things. So I just wanted to chit chat about all the dragon things, and then if you have any additional dragon books that you think either A, I would like, or B, you would like to just chat about, leave a comment down below and we will add to our dragon TBR. I am only mentioning a handful of things. To be honest, there are so many dragon books whenever you start researching them that I'm not necessarily going to mention. This is a very me TBR in terms of things that I actually want to read, and because I just kind of kept adding things, I just wanted to cut it off and get it back to a bit of a manageable level. I will leave Cassidy's video down below. She did a very comprehensive dragon TBR video. I think she's got some really good recommendations, especially if you want a bit more epic fantasy. So I'll leave that down below. Go ahead and check that out, and then let's go ahead and get into it. So in my favorite books of all time video, I mentioned that Aragon and the magic system and the lore of Aragon is one of my favorite books and situations of all time, given that there are dragons. Something that I have really wanted to do for honestly a hot minute is reading dragon books for a week, and I think it is time. Ramathon is now over. I have honestly lost all direction. I'm not necessarily in a reading slump, however, I could really use some dragons right now, and also I have quite a few books on my physical TBR that honestly I've been putting off, and I just feel like now's the time. You know, there's no time like the present. So one of my favorite books of all time is Aragon. This is one of the books that I read when I was a kid and I continuously think about, given that I am apparently obsessed with dragons. However, a question that I have for myself is, what level does that capacity lay in? Like, do I like dragons? Kind of a given. Do I like all kinds of dragons? Am I somebody who really loves the sassy chit-chatty dragons like this and in Fourth Wing? Or do I just like that idea of a animal companion situation? I don't really know what my fascination is, and I hope to, over the course of this week, maybe nail that down a little bit further. So in the course of this experiment, if you will, I not only have done an aggressive, I think aggressive amount of searching on Instagram, hard work I know, of different dragon books, and I think I have found a very decent selection of dragon books in different capacities, meaning that each of these books I feel like feature them in a little bit of a different way. You obviously, with this original book series, have the telepathic mind connection with the dragon rider situation, and I know that I like that, but not every book is going to have that level of dragon. So I'm curious throughout this week, and if this potentially could end up lasting a little bit longer than the week, given that I have some weekend plans. I'm going home to get my baby sister ready for prom, and I'm not ready for her to grow up. But I have some books on my physical TBR that I have been putting off a little bit for various reasons. I also have quite a few books that I have found online and have added to my TBR. I feel like we all talk about how much we like dragons, but I feel like of the books that are out there that are about dragons, they are either super hyped and there's a couple of them, or they are not as popular. So I do have quite a wide list, and I'm only going to include some of the more popular ones and some of the ones that I'm more interested in at the moment. Also keep in mind, I'm not necessarily in a reading slump, but the idea of an epic fantasy right now is a little ambitious for me at the current moment. However, I will go ahead and address some of those recommendations that I found, and maybe we will circle back in a later date. So before I get into the books that are newly on my TBR, I want to quickly talk about some of the books that I have read that do have dragons that I have enjoyed thus far. Number one being Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. I quite like this book a lot. I never continued on into book 2. I do have book 2 on my physical TBR as well as book 3, and I would like to eventually get to these. I do feel like I need to reread this to get some of the plot. However, this book is more of the dragon riders without as much of the dragon communication. Like the dragons are not necessarily characters in this book, but they are there and part of the plot. However, if you're looking for more of the political played out version and also in a YA format, that is going to be this series. I did quite like it a lot, and I do need to continue. I don't think I want to continue this week, given that I do kind of need to reread this, honestly. However, I would like to get to it eventually. If you saw in a fairly recent reading vlog, also if you've been on the internet at all, When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker is having its moment. This book does have dragons, and it's a little bit of a different format. Again, the dragons are not necessarily characters, but they are part of the plot and world building. I really like the beginning portion of this book and the middle portion. The middle to end and the end just got very long and just kind of kept going, to be honest. However, I didn't initially purchase this book, but the more that I kept thinking about the beginning and all of the characters, the more that I just liked it, and I needed to have the physical copy. So if you see this book around on the internet, just know it is a little bit longer and it is a little bit chunkier, and I don't think it needed to be this long and chunky at most parts. However, I did like it a lot. I do also want to quickly mention, because I will never not take an opportunity to bring up Throne of Glass. It's just who I am as a person. However, this series does have wyverns in it. You wouldn't pick up Throne of Glass for the dragons, but it is just like a fun element in there. Abraxas has my heart. He's just like a little puppy who likes to go and sniff his little flowers at the end of the day when he's not doing his full-time job of being a war machine. What else do we even have here? Obviously, Fourth Wing. Let's get it. Last but not least of the books that I have read, we have to talk about Fourth Wing for just a hot second. The Fourth Wing dragons are the most similar to the Aragon style of dragons, in which there is some telepathic communication, and the dragons themselves are full-formed characters. They're also very sassy and fun, and they just add a really fun element to the story, and that's kind of my favorite version, to be honest. However, if you've not read Fourth Wing and you want more of that style of dragon, I would definitely recommend it. I gave Fourth Wing originally a 4-star, and I also gave Iron Flame a 4-star. It's not my favorite book of all time. I definitely do see the hate. Like, I see the reasoning behind some of the hate that it gets. However, I liked it and had a fun time. So this style of dragon in particular is one of my favorites. Just throwing that out there. Okay, that is all of the books with dragons that I have read. Let's get into some things that I want to read. Let's start with the thing that I probably least want to read off of what is on my physical TBR. The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I picked this up and got about 100 pages into it maybe like a year ago. And to be honest, it is epic fantasy, and the dragons hadn't come into play yet, really, and I just wanted more at the moment, because this is epic fantasy and I'm just so not there in a mood right now. I will not be reading this week. However, I have heard that this is real good, so if you're looking for something more epic, maybe start here. Now, something else that I definitely need to read. I picked this up also a couple months ago and there's still a bookmark in there, go me, 176 pages into this, and honestly, it just wasn't necessarily connecting to it. So I definitely want to give this another shot. I hear people talk about how much they love this series so stinking much. I say series because I do also own book 2, though I never finished book 1. I couldn't not pick this up because this is just one of the most... I love this cover so stinking much. Regardless, I really need to read this book. I have been in such an audiobook mood, and I feel like this book on audio in particular would be helpful. So I definitely need to start this book from the beginning, because there was a lot of world building and I just didn't really get into it, and I wasn't really emotionally connecting to it. And I think it was when I read it, it was more of a book slumpy time again, which makes me kind of nervous to start it again. But I think if I try an audiobook, that might be a better route to take with this. Again, I know some people love this, and I want to be those people. 3 other books that I do physically own, one of which I have gotten... I feel like there's been a trend of me starting books and just not finishing them. Weird. Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. I got about 38% into this book a couple weeks ago, and I honestly, for the life of me, I was enjoying it. I was connecting to it. There was just something wrong in my head at the moment, and it was just definitely a right book, but wrong time. So this is definitely something that I want to continue this week. However, I am fully aware the dragons in this book are not at the forefront. Like, they're a very minor player, so I don't necessarily know that this fits in this vlog. However, I do want to finish it because Promise of Peridot is coming out next week, and I need to read it. So far in this book, dragons have been seen. She basically traveled on one, and that was fun, but it wasn't like a dragon book, you know? So I definitely want to read it this week, but I don't know how much I'm going to talk about it given that dragons aren't the forefront of said book. So then 2 books that are on my physical TBR that have been on my physical TBR for a hot freaking minute. We're gonna go, let's do this one. Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. I have had this book on my TBR for, I can't remember if I had it on my TBR before. I think I had it on my TBR before Rachel read it, but then she read it and that was when I bought it. And then that was around my birthday, which was, you know, last July. I still haven't read this. This book was picked up under a traditional publisher, so book 2 is not coming out for, I'd have to look, but it's like over a year. So this kind of held me back from starting this book because I heard that the cliffhanger was pretty gnarly, but I don't want to cause myself extra pain by reading this before book 2 comes out. However, I have been actively anticipating this book for over 6 months now, and I feel like it's just time. It's just time. I want to know. So this is very high on the TBR. The last physical book that I have before I get into Kindle books is House of Dragons by K.A. Lind. I have also had this on my TBR for a hot minute. We here in Lubbock used to have an indie bookstore, and they had this book. And I picked it up probably like a year and a half ago. Again, have not read it. This feels like a perfect time. This is a YA fantasy situation, and I'm interested. I feel like this will be a fairly quick read given that it's 470 pages, but the font on these pages is pretty big. There's a lot of spacing, there's a lot of margins, so I feel like this, not only have I been looking at it for a hot minute, and I do genuinely want to read it because I originally saw this on Book Talk, I think, and I just saw a lot of people talking about it like a year and a half ago, happened to see it in person, so I grabbed it, and I haven't read it yet. So I feel like this, Fear the Flames, and Dawn of Onyx, Priory of the Orange Tree, I don't know, they're all so highly on the TBR, so we may or may not get to it. Fabulous. A handful of other books that I want to mention. Number 1, a book that I am definitely going to be reading, if not this week, then next week, because I did get the Nut Galley arc for it, which is very fun and exciting. And I honestly forgot that I applied for it. I applied for a whole bunch of books a couple months ago and then just kind of completely forgot about anything that I ever applied for. And then I magically got the arc for Dragon Rider. And I have really high hopes. I'm also kind of terrified. The cover just seems like it is going to be more epic fantasy. And again, I do enjoy epic fantasy from time to time. However, my brain's just a little fuzzy at the moment. However, you look at the reviews on Goodreads for it and it's all like, if you thought Fourth Wing was lacking in writing quality but loved the dragons and violence, this is for you. Thanks, Shelby. I really hope that I have that same experience. There's a lot of people that talk really highly about this book and I am intrigued. There's only 3.9 stars on it right now, but of those 3.9 stars, a significant amount of them are 4 and 5 stars, so I'm just really interested. This book publishes April 23rd, so if I don't read this in this vlog, I have to read it like soon, which means I might as well just read it in this vlog, right? Will this vlog last a week? I don't know. This entire TBR section of this video will last a week, it feels like. Do I just turn this video into like a TBR? Another book that I had borrowed from the library a while ago and that just didn't end up getting to it is His Majesty's Dragon. I have heard that this series is really good if you like the dragons as characters, which I feel like would be me. So a Kindle Unlimited, what seems like to be a fan wrote that I literally just searched on the Kindle app for is Dragonbound by Sam Hall. It has 4.28 stars, but it only has 3,800 ratings, so it kind of gives Intriguer RH era. Does that mean, are we talking like reverse harem era? Is this a reverse harem? This book is apparently a slow burn wide shoes full of court politics, dismantling purity culture, and the double standard between men and women's virtue, and finding an identity outside of the boxes and society places you in at birth, all packaged neatly in a Cinderella retelling, except this time the evil stepmother and stepsister actually get what they deserve, and instead of a glass slipper, it's a dragon's egg. Okay. Consider me to be interested. So the last and final book that I want to talk about as far as TBR things, I'm realizing that this TBR continues to grow the more that I say words, and it's just how it is. It is Dark Wind by Renee Dugan, and I'm currently in the middle of reading this. I say in the middle, I can actually tell you. Oh, I'm actually on chapter 17 of this book, which feels like surprising to me. I did get the book on Audible. I don't necessarily love the narrator, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as an audio. However, this book comes very immensely highly recommended to me by two of my bookstagram friends, both Kate and Alex. They love this series, and they are actually doing a book club over on Instagram for these books. Time kind of slipped away from me, and I did not finish book 1 in time for the book club this first round. However, I'm really hoping that I love this book and will want to continue on to book 2 and then get back on track with said book club. But I am enjoying it so far. The amount of dragons in this book so far is basically there's like dragon steel armor that's mentioned, and that it has been mentioned that the dragons are not necessarily extinct, but they're, I think, basically extinct. Like, the comment is made that dragon steel armor is now hard to get because the dragons have basically vanished off into nowhere. So I am just assuming that they're gonna come back magically. I don't know. Tinfoil hat theory. We'll just have to see and find out. So I, over the last couple days, have spent quite some time literally just searching dragon book recommendations on Instagram, and I wanted to just kind of take you through a couple of the highlights here. Oh, something else that I do actually own, The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I got it and The Shadow of the Gods at the same time from, again, that same indie bookstore that I guess had overstocked and sold each of them for like $5. So I call that a win. Messy Gods and Fave Disasters, very interesting to me. A political fantasy with a more great MC, kind of curious. To Shape a Dragon's Breath, I do see this one quite often. That would have been a really good Realmathon book, given that it is a school setting. Together We Burn. I forgot that one technically does have dragons in it. Assassin Quest by Robin Hobb. Could be a vibe. See, everybody talks about Dawn of Onyx having dragons in them. They've been touched on. So hopefully that becomes a bigger part. I also am only 30% into the book.
For some fantasy recommendations and suggestions that all feature dragons. I always recommend John Gwynne whenever I can. The Shadow of the Gods. Blood and Fire is the first book in the Bound and the Broken series. This is like classic fantasy in a modern voice. Follows Kalen Breyer. He is a small town farm boy. Kalen lives in a world that is divided by war and mistrust, and the dragons have been long dead thanks to the Empire hunting them down, until one night 3 strange individuals arrive in Kalen's town, and the next thing you know, Kalen and his friends are on the run, and then Kalen bonds with a dragon egg, and he discovers that he might be the chosen one, even though he does not want to be. One of my favorite reads from 2023 was To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monique Blackgoose. A great comp for this is Aragon meets Babel. We are following our
Forgotten and the Feared by E.C. Garrett. So I have heard, I haven't heard. I've seen quite a lot of people posting about Dragonfall. A lot of these people have just been saying that it's on their TBR, and also the Goodreads review are not that necessarily high. So like, I'm interested, but I'm also a little cautious. We'll say. What is this? The Last Dragon King? It's giving like Dragon King, not like Dragon King, you know? I've never seen anything about the book, and I am interested. The Way, we haven't even really talked about it. I read Aragon when I was a kid. I listened to the Aragon audiobook and then half of the Eldest audiobook again. I need to go back and listen to the rest of that series because I desperately want to go read Murtagh. Desperately. Dragon Rider again. Priory, Shadow of the Gods, Day of Fallen Night. When the, what is that one like? When the sun becomes the sun, something becomes the sun. Copper Promise, Forge of the Dawn of Narnia. Did that one have dragons? I guess so. It wasn't really a dragon, it was more like a water creature, right? The Hobbit. Literally The Hobbit. Are we just gonna completely ignore Smaug exist? Apparently. The nerdy dust dragons do it for me every time. I feel like I would like to go back and read this book again, but also I liked it when I read it the first time around. She Who Became the Sun. That's what it is. It would help if I would just scroll. Listen, I personally would disagree with the point that Throne of Glass has dragons, because technically they're wyverns, and also they're not really a big thing. They're more like, they're not a big plot point, but they're not the plot point, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in this particular setting. We'll go with that. Define dragon romance. Are we talking like romance between dragons? Are we talking about romance with a dragon? What's first? Different worlds. Will be fun family. We're just gonna save that for later. I tell you, some fourth wings are just literally so pretty. The Last Dragon King. So only have 3, 7, 4 stars. The news throws a woman in my village into a tizzy. I don't think that this book is for me at the moment. However, I am definitely curious if others read it, and let me know how it goes. I really quite like the cover of this book though. Dragon Rider, I am so excited. I feel like the cover of this book just doesn't just call to me, but it seems like the description, the plot, and all of the reviews are calling to me. So that is everything on my Dragon TBR at the moment. I feel like this is just a really good mix of a little bit of epic fantasy, some romanticy, some KU reverse harem Waichu situation. I don't really know anything other than that. I'm just excited to get into some of these books. We shall see what happens. If you are interested in seeing me read some of those books, then go ahead and do subscribe to my channel. I will be vlogging, reading at least a week of these. If you have any thoughts or opinions as to which I should read first, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.